The year is 4032. Most of humanity has mutated into new creatures called abbeys. In the 21st century, Professor David Pilcher foresaw an unknown mutation in human DNA and built the town of Wayward Pines, which was meant to serve as an ark for the last surviving humans. The chosen ones, those who were destined to restore the human population, were frozen without their consent for 2,000 years. However, upon awakening, not everyone was pleased with life in a city surrounded by a tall fence with millions of monsters lurking outside. Dr. Theo Yedlin is on vacation at the beach. In a bar, he strikes up a conversation with a stranger who, at first glance, doesn't raise any suspicion. But the casual chat ends strangely. Yedlin wakes up several years later to find himself in the town of Wayward Pines. On his way to the hospital, accompanied by a group of strangers, Theo manages to escape. He seeks help at the first house he finds, hoping to call the police. But as he observes the strange behavior of the homeowners, Theo begins to doubt if he's doing the right thing. The police do respond to Yedlin's call, but instead of offering help, they return him to the hands of the strangers. They take Theo to the hospital, and after telling him a story about a government experiment, the people in black ask him to work for the good of society. The kidnappers ask Theo to save a patient who is extremely important to them. After examining the girl, Yedlin promises to do everything possible and instructs them to prepare the operating room while he assesses the seriousness of her injuries. Theo's patient turns out to be Kate. While the doctor operates on the girl, Carrie reports to Jason about losses within the ranks of the first generation. Looking at a photo of his rival, the dictator realizes that as long as Ben is free, their movement in the city are in danger. This is confirmed by Megan, who appears in the room. She reminds him of Pilcher's main rule: clear laws, strict punishment. Theo visits his patient, and she tries to tell him what's really going on. But Carrie doesn't allow the doctor to listen to Kate and instead urges him to take a break. While walking through the town, Theo witnesses soldiers separating a woman from her young son. The doctor tries to intervene but is once again prevented from understanding what's going on and is forced to walk away. However, later Yedlin does learn the woman's fate. She is brought to the central square along with others, accused of rebellion. Jason addresses the cheering crowd, assuring everyone that his cruelty is the path to humanity's salvation. After these words, he executes the woman without any explanation. Megan visits Kate in the hospital room and suggests they unite for the future of Wayward Pines. But Kate attacks her rival, armed with a scalpel. Kate confesses that she will never watch as dictators destroy the world. She raises the scalpel and ends her suffering. Mario brings Theo and other prisoners to the wall. He opens a passage and, after jamming the gas pedal with a rock, sends the vehicle into the lair of the abbeys. The monsters notice the prey but run past, trying to climb over the fence. Members of the first generation movement watch a motivational video left for them by Pilcher, followed by footage from surveillance cameras showing the abbeys attempting to breach the wall. The creatures sacrifice themselves to create a ramp, allowing their comrades to infiltrate Wayward Pines. Jason realizes something is wrong and orders a squad to gather and check the situation in person. Meanwhile, the prisoners, led by Ben, try to escape from the vehicle, taking advantage of the fact that the monsters are ignoring them. Military vehicles approach the wall and soldiers open fire on the abbeys. But despite this, some creatures manage to leap over the barrier and engage in open combat. The first to be injured is Carrie. An abbey slashes open her stomach, and Jason is forced to leave his subordinates to take his companion to the hospital. Very soon, the leader regrets his decision to get rid of Theo. No one is capable of performing the complex surgery and saving the girl. Jason orders the doctor to be found, and several vehicles must drive beyond the wall. Without resisting, Theo jumps into one of them to avoid falling into the hands of the advancing mutants. The leader of the movement asks Yedlin to perform the operation, but Theo refuses to proceed without an explanation of what's going on. Jason is forced to strike a deal with the doctor, promising to return his wife and revealing that aside from Wayward Pines, there are no other humans. The rest of the planet is overrun by abbeys. After the surgery, Carrie regains consciousness. Another problem for the town arises: depleted supplies. Jason asks CJ to prepare for the harvest, which is beyond the wall, but the town must prepare carefully for the encounter with the abbeys. Theo has to come to terms with his new role. He is appointed the head and most likely the only doctor in Wayward Pines. The only thing he disagrees with is the portrait of Pilcher hanging on the wall of his new office. Megan gives a lecture for the teenagers, using an abbey body to show the mutants' weak points. One of the students admits he knows about the attempted breach, but Megan assures him that the only danger to the town is the rebels. Everything else is under control of the authorities. After examining one of the teenagers, Theo informs Jason of serious issues. Due to the food shortage, the health of the residents is at risk. However, the young dictator doesn't appreciate the doctor's tone or his attempts to change the order in Wayward Pines. CJ prepares a team for the harvest. He suggests using fire as protection against the Abbeys, and after a brief briefing, the vehicles drive beyond the wall to bring back the harvest and save the town. The monsters attack immediately as the harvesters appear, but CJ's plan works. The fire scares off the Abbeys, and the group has some time to gather food. One of the soldiers unexpectedly encounters Ben, but the young man refuses to help his old friend, fearing severe punishment for associating with a rebel. The loaded vehicles leave, and Ben doesn't manage to pass through the open gates. He then stands in front of the camera and addresses Jason, stating that all of the leader's actions are the wrong choice in tyranny. Rumors that Ben is still alive reach his mother. Teresa tries to find out details from the soldiers and persuade them to return for the boy, but no one wants to deal with the troublemakers. Ben continues to hide in the danger zone, hoping to return to Wayward Pines, but a pack of Abbeys attacks the boy, turning him into a hearty meal. Jason checks the cameras and notices that there are no Abbeys in any of the sectors. The leader celebrates, believing he has driven the monsters out and that the town is now completely safe. But it seems the mutants have a different opinion. Several soldiers are sent on a reconnaissance mission, but they spot nothing except a frightened deer. This pleases Jason greatly, as he is convinced the Abbeys have left. But Carrie sees an unpleasant side to this. If Ben isn't found, the leader will have to answer to the town for the death of one of the first generation. At night, voices are heard in Jason's house, and, loading his weapon, the young man goes downstairs. To his surprise, Pam appears before him. The old woman reminds her protege of everything she taught him. She confesses that she killed her brother only because he tried to save the town through dictatorship and violence. Pam asks Jason to let her stay and help him build a truly bright future and save humanity. Jason agrees to forgive the traitor and takes her to the square to announce his decision to the town. Unbeknownst to Jason, Pam sneaks into the lab where the captured Abbeys are kept. Megan arrives shortly after, but the thief manages to leave without revealing her intentions for coming there. Back at home, Pam plans to use a drug she stole from the lab. Her plan is interrupted by Theo's arrival, but the nurse quickly directs him to the door to get what she came for in the hated town. Megan learns of the stolen drug, but it turns out it wasn't a medicine. Pam had taken a smallpox sample. Meanwhile, Pam attends a meeting in Jason's office. She unexpectedly kisses her protege in a way she never had before and joins the conversation. Dr. Yedlin bursts into the room. He orders everyone to leave without touching anything and avoiding contact with people. The doctor then reveals Pam's plans, and the woman doesn't even attempt to resist. Pam admits that, in her opinion, Wayward Pines should be destroyed. She asks Jason to put an end to the story, but the leader orders the traitor to be arrested. At night, Jason goes on a walk with Pam. He asks his mentor to tell him the end of the story about Wayward Pines, but after receiving an answer that wounds his pride, the dictator kills the old woman. A few days after the Abbey attack, Xander finally wakes up at the bottom of a deep well. There, the young man is found by a mutant, but he manages to defeat the monster and climb to the surface. At a meeting on the problems of Wayward Pines, CJ discusses the need to increase the area of crops. The population is growing, but food is becoming scarcer. Carrie and Megan believe it's too early to address this issue, but Jason supports the farmer and allows him to search for new fields. Xander is quietly approached by a man with a knife. He demands that Xander reveal who sent him and who currently rules the town. The savage himself says he has been here for a very long time. He is the only one from the team Pilcher sent to search for other survivors. Guards notice movement near the wall, and a duty squad is dispatched to the scene. The soldiers recognize Xander, accompanied by the stranger, but let them inside without question. The savage is immediately sent to Dr. Yedlin. Theo tries to find out from the patient if there are other people beyond the wall, but the man only says that the Abbeys are not the enemy. They are the replacement meant to take their place. Jason learns the name of the savage, Adam Hassler. He asks the doctor to tell him everything the patient said, but Theo refuses to disclose the confidential information and suggests the leader speak to the survivor personally. Throughout this time, Hassler struggles to recover. He is constantly haunted by nightmares of Abbey attacks he endured during his months beyond the wall. Finally, the man can no longer take it and decides to leave the hospital, fearing that the mutants will get to him there. The savage escapes into the streets, frightening crowds of townspeople. His hallucinations, in which mutants attack him, intensify, forcing him to find shelter in a deserted alley. There, Adam is discovered by Teresa. She recognizes an old acquaintance and tries to find out if he has seen Ben, but the savage hesitates to tell the woman the truth. Theo tells his wife about Adam's words, and Rebecca urges him to inform the town's leadership. The town sends off the first group, who go in search of new lands suitable for settlement and cultivation. Teresa stops CJ's vehicle and asks to join the mission so she can find her son. Hassler also joins the soldiers, having failed to adjust to the peaceful life in town. CJ gazes with excitement at the landscape he hasn't seen in a very long time. He orders the squad to set up camp and prepares for a night outside the wall. Adam leaves without explanation, but later that night he returns, causing a stir in the camp. Hearing the commotion, Rachel wakes up and the soldiers part to reveal what the savage has brought. On the ground lies a covered body, and even before she removes the covering, it becomes clear that Ben is underneath it. Rebecca brings Lucy, the girl she's trying to protect from the harsh rules of Wayward Pines, into her home. Upon learning that the girl is to be placed in the breeding program, Theo becomes furious and supports his wife's decision. Frank, Lucy's brother, feels responsible for her rule-breaking. He escapes from the academy and goes for an evening walk, but in the city center he faces a greater shock, and Abby appears on the town's carousel. The mutant stands tall before the boy, and this is caught on surveillance cameras. Jason orders the main streets to be cordoned off and makes sure no one finds out what's happening. Several armed men come to the boy's aid, but Carrie asks the leader not to destroy this creature. It is the first female Abby they have encountered. Despite attempts to keep the incident a secret, Frank becomes a school hero. Megan studies the new creature and reports to the leadership about the behavioral differences. According to the scientist, the female is much calmer than her counterparts, and the other captive Abbeys have also become more peaceful since her arrival. The doctor also shows the Abby's palm. It bears a strange pattern, unlike any scars. Megan believes this pattern might help them learn more about the mutants and eventually eradicate them. A search of the city yields no results. No other creatures are found, nor are there any breaches in the wall. No one can explain how the female managed to enter the city or why she did so. The only explanation that comes to Jason's mind is that the Abbeys may have accomplices among the population. Jason turns to Rebecca for help. She designed the city and may know the way the Abbey got inside. Upon learning that a new Abbey has appeared in the lab, Theo requests access to the research. Carrie agrees, but she warns the doctor that not all group members will like this. Naturally, Carrie is referring to Megan. The scientist makes every effort to appear satisfied with the doctor's presence, but she disobeys all of Yedlin's orders and conducts experiments that could harm the mutant. The Abbeys have quickly learned the lesson with fire. After making torches, they surround the cornfield and set it ablaze. The creature in the lab at that moment feels everything that is happening to its pack. Several years before the current events, unaware that a human invasion is imminent, the Abbey tribe enjoys a peaceful life deep in the forest. But suddenly a helicopter appears over the mutants' camp, and most of the tribe is wiped out. Only a few survive, with no other choice but to seek revenge. In the city, a siren blares, and panic begins. At the same time, the Abbeys set another field on fire, knowing that by doing this, they are depriving humans of any chance of survival. Adam is the first to notice the mutants approaching. He raises the alarm and orders the squad to move to a safe place, but it's already too late. The first creatures infiltrate the camp, and one of them attacks Teresa. Megan, unaware of anything, works on reports in the lab. She is only distracted when the Abbeys start banging on their cages, and the close proximity no longer feels safe. Theo learns that the food fields are burning. At that moment, Carrie arrives and asks the doctor to return to the hospital and prepare for a difficult night. Jason sends out several dozen vehicles, all civilian men, or to extinguish the fields, while the military protects them from Abbey attacks. Realizing how this will end, Theo orders his colleagues to prepare all available beds and be ready to receive not tens but hundreds of patients. The battlefield truly becomes a nightmare. The Abbeys are far more clever and resourceful. There's no one left to extinguish the fields. Soldiers fall before they can even reach them, suffering severe injuries from the mutants. Within an hour, the hospital turns into chaos. The screams of patients mix with the bustle of medical staff who are not prepared for such an onslaught. Theo tries to help everyone, but he cannot save them all, and many patients die in the hands of frightened interns. CJ recounts how the Abbeys attack the camp and everyone trying to extinguish the fire. But Carrie and Megan don't believe the farmer's words. They are convinced the mutants have no intelligence and thus could not have had a plan. Jason sides with the women. He is more concerned about the fate of the harvest, but CJ has no good news. All the fields have been burned, and in less than 6 weeks the city will fall to starvation. The food shortage is not the only threat. Theo informs the leader that there is a critical shortage of medicine, and soon people will begin to die from simple colds or minor cuts. Yedlin doesn't hold back in his critique, saying that Pilcher was an idiot. In creating his own world, he failed to consider the basics. Jason's thoughts are interrupted by news that around 100 Abbeys have gathered near the wall. Despite the obvious situation, the leader refuses to admit that the mutants are evolving and the advantage has long been on their side. Teresa spends several hours in intensive care, but her heart gives out, and the last thing the woman sees is her son and husband, with whom she will finally reunite. Megan performs an MRI on the Abbey, and looking at the monitor, Theo sees a surprising result. The part of the brain responsible for thinking and problem-solving is twice the size of a human's. The Abbey's roar echoes throughout the city. The monitor shows that several thousand mutants have gathered near the wall. The creatures locked in the cages respond to their kin, but the female remains remarkably calm. After a conversation with Adam, Theo examines the female Abby's hand and discovers the pattern. He becomes furious that Megan hadn't told him about the design, but the scientist doesn't understand the significance at this moment. The doctor asks Megan not to interfere while he tries to establish contact with the Abbey. In Theo's opinion, it's the only way to find out what the mutants want and save the city. Yedlin shows the mutants several cards with pictures and tries to explain their meaning. CJ had been one of those who woke up from cryosleep every 100 years to observe changes on Earth. During one such outing, the botanist met a strange young man. He still resembled a human, but had peculiar features. The stranger rambled, ate raw fish, and suffered from unknown ailments. CJ couldn't shake the new companion. The young man demanded to be taken with him and cared for. To avoid risking the others, CJ eliminated the threat. Theo asked Megan to offer the Abbey a treat, but the mutant points towards its kin. This confirms the doctor's theory. She is not just an intelligent creature. She is a leader who cares for her pack. Adam bursts into the lab, demanding that the scientists release the female. He claims that she is the leader of the Abbeys, and her followers are gathering near the wall, ready to do anything to save their leader. A heated argument erupts among the group. Megan is convinced that Adam is overestimating the importance of the mutant, while Theo believes the leader's presence could help them negotiate with the creatures and save the city. Memories take CJ back to the day he woke up and roused the others. Pilcher, the founder of the project, was confident that mutations had ended several hundred years ago and that they were now facing only an empty, uninhabited Earth. But the scientist was wrong. The first walk in the forest revealed strange creatures vaguely resembling humans. Pilcher didn't even attempt to make contact. He also refused to return to cryosleep and slumber for several more centuries. The only thing that occurred to the professor was to declare the mutants enemies, build a city, and fence it off with a tall, electrified wall. Theo tries to communicate with the female Abbey, but Jason arrives at the lab. Like Megan and his predecessor, Pilcher, the leader of the first generation, refuses to seek a peaceful solution, convinced that the remaining humans will prevail against the thousands of creatures at the fence. The argument goes in circles, but Yedlin reminds everyone that the lives of all the city's residents are at stake. Dr. Yedlin explains to the Abbey that Jason is their leader, but the female mutant disagrees. She shows the doctor that he should be the leader of the town. This infuriates the young dictator, and he tries to stop the experiment, but Theo stands his ground. Signaling that he means no harm, Theo unlocks the cage of a male Abbey and tries to enter, but the aggressive mutant doesn't share the doctor's optimism and grabs his arm. On one hand, this frightens everyone present, but on the other, they see the female giving a signal, and the monsters obey her. In Theo's opinion, everything went perfectly, but Jason thinks otherwise. Before the leader's eyes, he kills the males and plans to eliminate her as well. Theo wrestles the gun from the madman, and Carrie tries to convince him not to argue with the others. She asks her friend to leave and think things over, while the doctor continues his experiments. Megan notices a crimson puddle beneath her and feels unwell. The last thing she sees is the freed female Abbey behind her. At the moment when Theo was unlocking the code, the creature memorized the combination and easily repeated it. The city's residents are assured that nothing dangerous is happening and that they can continue their normal lives. But Theo returns to the lab and realizes that things are far from normal. He discovers Megan's body in the empty cage of the female Abbey. At the same time, the mutant sneaks towards the exit. Jason arrives at the scene. He orders the building to be searched, unwilling to admit that he is responsible for what happened. The soldiers search every corner of the hospital, including the underground passages, but it's already pointless. The mutant is running through the forest, making her way to her kind. Suddenly, the Abbey slips off a cliff, but she manages to collect herself and lands unharmed. Dr. Yedlin insists that they must warn the townspeople. If the female Abbey reaches the exit, she will likely open it for thousands of her kin. But Jason stubbornly holds his ground. He plans to send unarmed townsfolk to search for the creature and fight the other Abbeys. The town's school children are locked in the school building. The other residents are also informed of the Abbey's escape and are ordered to lock themselves in their homes to avoid encountering the creature. The Abbey hides in the forest and notices Frank and Lucy walking by. She also sees a couple in love, but she doesn't attack the teenagers, trying to avoid detection. After this, the monster heads straight for the city and attacks one of the soldiers who participated in the hunt. The scream of the unfortunate soldier echoes throughout Wayward Pines, warning the residents of the danger. The Abbey takes the body of its victim with it. Soldiers spot the Abbey on the rooftops of houses. They open fire, but once again the monster manages to escape. The mutant continues to toy with the people, appearing in different locations. All those with any kind of weapon are called in to join the search. Xander gathers a small team, hoping to track down the Abbey. Theo and Adam also set out in search of the mutant, but all they find is the body of a soldier, which the creature dragged away. The hunters realize it was a trap. The Abbey lured them into the forest so they wouldn't interfere with her final tasks in the city. Armed citizens flood the streets, but the Abbey manages to evade them, remaining unnoticed. This leads to frightened hunters firing at each other, solving the mutant's problems for her. Finding several bodies and shooters in the street, Theo tries to de-escalate the situation. He asks a young woman to let the soldiers go so they can take their comrade to the hospital. The number of red dots on the monitor rapidly increases, indicating the number of Abbeys near the wall. Jason shows Carrie the bunker designed especially for them. He confesses to her that this shelter would allow them not only to survive but also to enter cryosleep for as long as needed to eventually restore Earth. However, Carrie is forced to admit to her boyfriend that after the Abbey's attack, she cannot have children, and there's no point in wasting a capsule on her. Rebecca encounters the Abbey in the middle of the city, but before the monster can attack, Xander injures the mutant, protecting his fiancée and their future child. Breathing a sigh of relief, the couple hurries to the wall to find weak spots and fix them. Xander remembers the pit, and the group theorizes that it might be a tunnel leading into the city. The wounded female Abbey flees into the forest and finds an entrance to such a tunnel. She prepares to leave the city, but Adam appears behind her, intent on killing the mutant. The female Abbey straightens up, and fear flashes in her eyes. Seeing this, the hunter lets her go to her kind. Adam also enters the tunnel, determined to end this once and for all. Jason's squad finds a pipe from which the wild cries of the mutants can be heard. The leader orders the passage to be blown up, hoping this will stop the wild mutants. Adam manages to escape from the other side of the tunnel, but there, he is met by a crowd of wild, hungry Abbeys. However, the female with the pattern on her hand does not allow them to harm the man who saved her life and helped her escape. Hassler walks past unharmed. Despite the return of the leader, the crowd of Abbeys does not leave the area around the fence. The Abbey leader reaches the camp and is taken in by caring elders, remembering all those who became victims of humanity. Observing the Abbeys, Carrie sees that the escaped female is getting worse, and her kin gather around to say their goodbyes. But Jason is not moved by this news. He sees no tragedy in the death of an ordinary mutant. Realizing that all the city's problems are caused by the dictator's stubbornness, Theo decides to address the issue and turns to Xander for help, but the men don't have time to discuss things. CJ invites the doctor to an important meeting with Jason. The leader offers two options: surrender and accept their end, or go back into cryosleep. The female Abbey's condition worsens, but her kin don't abandon her. They treat her wound and do everything they can to keep their leader alive. Jason addresses the townspeople, tells them about the Abbey invasion, and gives instructions for the evacuation. This causes unrest, but CJ steps in to calm everyone down, assuring them that the process is completely safe. After giving several lectures, CJ heads to the control center to check the equipment, but the plan is under threat. The program encounters a loading error. CJ informs Jason of the issue, insisting that the capsules need to be recharged. But there is hardly any time left, and the leader will have to choose who gets to leave the danger zone first. To make the right decision, Jason asks Dr. Yedlin to check all the citizens' profiles and assess their health on a 5-point scale. Theo dislikes this idea and suggests using a lottery to choose the lucky ones, but Jason insists that only those valuable for reproduction should remain in the end. Yedlin decides to use Carrie. He tells her that Jason has decided to leave her to be torn apart by the Abbeys because of her inability to have children. The doctor convinces her of his truth and suggests she eliminate the traitor. Many years ago, while planning the construction of a new world, David Pilcher adopted a child to make him the heir to everything. But before signing the papers, the professor meets the boy's mother, Carrie. She was the one who gave her son to the professor, who later named him Jason. While flipping through his fiancée's personal file, Jason finds a secret folder where he discovers that his fiancée is actually his biological mother. At that very moment, Carrie enters the room. The calm conversation escalates into a scuffle and a fight. Finally, a gunshot is heard in the room. Jason recalls the first time he saw Carrie, how she was introduced to the new world, and how he promised she would always be safe. But now the once-in-love young people are on the floor, in pools of crimson. As Jason fades, Carrie takes his hand to stay by his side. The female Abby regains consciousness and signals to her kin, gathering them around her. Jason is brought to the hospital, and Theo prepares him for surgery. Meanwhile, in the forest, the Abbeys are preparing for a final assault on the city. The residents are being prepared for evacuation into cryocapsules, but most townspeople linger around the hospital, waiting for news about their leader. After several hours of surgery, Theo announces Jason's death to everyone. The doctor assures the people that the plan remains unchanged. They will all be saved soon. CJ hands Dr. Yedlin the list Jason had made. He suggests following the old plan to avoid panic and save precious time. Registration for the capsules begins, and the first to enter are women and children. Those not on the first list are asked to wait at home for their turn, but many suspect they will never be called. Even among the children, there are excess. One of these extras is Frank, who had once openly told Theo that he didn't want to have children. Xander also doesn't receive an invitation. He realizes this is Yedlin's personal revenge for taking his wife. The closer the Abbeys get to the fence, the more aggressive they become. Their movements are watched by the female leader, standing above the rest. Watching the screen, Theo realizes that the fence is on the verge of being breached. The doctor decides to record one last message for future generations in which he urges humanity not to repeat David Pilcher's experiments. Such endeavors only lead to dire consequences. To somehow fix the situation, Dr. Yedlin plans to inject himself with 3 strains of dangerous viruses involuntarily surrendered to the Abbeys. This is how he intends to wipe out the terrible mutant species. Those who didn't get a place in the capsules begin to panic and search for alternative ways out. Riots break out in the city. Only Xander and Frank calmly accept their fate, sitting in a small street bar. Theo arrives to pick up the boys and take them to the departure point, but the road is blocked by 2 young men with a burning bottle and a firm decision to steal the car. Xander manages to calm the boys down, and the group leaves. On the way, Theo picks up another passenger, his intern Arlene. Yedlin returns to the lab to inject himself with the virus strains and head for the wall. But there he is met by Carrie, who asks to take on this mission herself. After Jason's death and the news that he was her son, she no longer wants to run from her fate. Learning that she has already injected herself with the viruses, Theo agrees to leave with the others. As a parting gesture, he gives her one more vial, which will numb her pain during the encounter with the Abbeys. Before the capsules are launched, Theo wishes the travelers a safe journey. He admits that he doesn't know what awaits them in the future, but hopes it will be better than the present. People take their places as the city slowly comes to a standstill in the face of danger. CJ is supposed to be the last to take his place, but his capsule malfunctions and the man sees his wife, who has been dead for several hundred years. Nevertheless, CJ decides to stay behind, hoping that one day he can change the world. Carrie opens the wall and steps outside the city, into the land where the Abbeys will live for many centuries. And so the series ends.
Furiosa lives with her tribe in a green oasis amidst an arid desert. One day, she and her friend go out to gather fruits. Suddenly, the girl notices strangers in the forest. She sneaks up to their motorcycles and disables one of them. However, when she moves to the next bike, the girl is spotted. Furiosa blows the whistle that her tribe uses to signal danger and starts running. However, the girl is captured, tied up, and taken away. But her signal was heard. The entire tribe rushes to her rescue, and the girl's mother, Mary, arms herself, mounts a horse, and gives chase. Mary pursues the kidnappers for a long time, eventually catching up to and killing the slowest one. She then takes his motorcycle and continues the chase. Soon, another bandit's motorcycle breaks down. 2 others stop to check for pursuers. During this time, Furiosa bites through the fuel line of the motorcycle. Her captor doesn't notice this, and seeing the pursuit on the horizon, the bandits ride on. Meanwhile, Furiosa's mother finds the second bandit's motorcycle and switches to it. As evening falls, the bandits stop to check their bikes. They realize the pursuit isn't far behind. One suggests abandoning the girl, but another reminds them of their low status. Bringing the captive girl back would raise their standing in the gang. While they argue, Furiosa manages to free her legs and runs away, but the bandits notice and catch up with her. Morning comes as Mary catches up with the kidnappers. She sees them through the scope of her rifle, but shooting now is risky, as they are close to the bandit camp. Nevertheless, she shoots one. The other bandit, however, has secured Furiosa to his back, making it too risky for her to shoot. The bandit rides into the camp, sparking a dispute among the biker gang members, each wanting the girl for themselves. However, her captor claims he has seen a place of abundance, causing excitement among the crowd. The bandits decide to take the girl to their leader, Dementus. Mary follows them. On the way, Furiosa manages to push her captor off the motorcycle, preventing him from revealing the oasis's location. Dementus tries to intimidate the girl, but she remains silent. The bandit then resorts to trickery, ordering her to be washed and fed, promising to send her home the next day. Meanwhile, Mary disguises herself in the clothes of the last bandit she shot and heads to Dementus's camp. Furiosa is taken to a tent where a servant cleans her up. Seeing Mary in a helmet, the servant gets scared and begs not to be harmed, promising not to raise the alarm. Mary spares her, but as soon as mother and daughter leave, the servant runs to the warriors. A chase quickly ensues following the tracks of Mary's and Furiosa's motorcycle. Realizing they can't escape together, Mary orders her daughter to ride away. As a parting gift, she gives her a peach seed and makes Furiosa promise to plant it and protect the green lands. Furiosa rides away but stops and watches as her mother fights Dementus's hordes. Mary fights bravely, but cannot overcome all of them and is captured. The girl, crying, runs to her and manages to see Dementus's men brutally executing her mother. Dementus promises to release both if the girl shows the way to the oasis, but Furiosa only cries in grief. Dementus takes the girl and locks her in a cage. She is forced to watch the bloody competitions Dementus loves to hold. He tries to appease the girl and even gives her his favorite teddy bear. Dementus's history specialist offers to teach her to read and write, suggesting she could become a historian, but she plans to escape back to the Greenlands, tattooing the path onto her arm. One day, Dementus and his horde, searching for the place of abundance, encounter a strange warrior who claims to have come from the citadel where there is everything. Dementus decides this must be the land they seek and heads in that direction. Soon they reach the impregnable fortress guarded by the army of Immortan Joe. Dementus delivers a fiery speech, trying to rally the common people to his side. However, the citadel's leader offers to choose one of his warriors to begin the battle. Dementus's servant points to one of Immortan Joe's soldiers. The soldier takes up his weapon, says goodbye, and jumps into the midst of the biker warriors, where he detonates himself, taking many enemies with him. But Dementus cannot retreat. The battle begins. Immortan Joe's men skillfully capture Dementus's motorcycles and cars with hook chains, lifting them into the air. They do this with Furiosa's cage as well, but the history specialist manages to latch onto the cage, and Dementus himself comes to help. They free the girl from the cage and flee. Sometime later, Dementus rebuilds his horde and plans to capture one of Immortan Joe's military bases, Gastown. First, he stops a fuel tanker headed for the town and forces his people to disguise themselves as Citadel warriors. Disguised as Joe's men, they head to the town, whose guards, at the last moment, open the gates for the suspicious convoy. Dementus's men capture Gastown and now can dictate terms to Immortan Joe. Learning of this, the Citadel leader agrees to negotiations where the bikers demand tribute in the form of supplies. Dementus's people display the head of Gastown's leader, threatening to impale it with an iron spike if Immortan Joe does not meet the bikers' demands. Realizing he cannot defeat the bikers outright, Joe agrees to consider their demands, but he notices Furiosa in the crowd. Seeing his interest, Dementus claims the girl is his daughter, but for the first time in a long while, Furiosa speaks and accuses Dementus of killing her mother. Eventually, Immortan Joe allows Dementus to rule Gastown, promising to supply the bikers with some food and water in exchange for Furiosa and the biker gang's mechanic. Angered, Dementus takes the teddy bear from the girl. Furiosa is taken to a room where Immortan Joe's women rest. On this day, one of his wives gives birth, but the child is again born a mutant. While the girl watches, one of Joe's warriors, Rictus, notices the bells in her hair. Realizing she has caught his interest, Furiosa cuts off her hair and makes a wig with the bells that night. Later, Rictus takes her to his quarters, where he examines her and finds the star tattoo on her arm leading to her home. But, fascinated by the jingling hair, he starts to stroke it. The girl twists away, leaves the wig in his hands, and escapes.
Sometime later, Furiosa, who managed to trick her way into a crane operator brigade, earns praise as a fearless boy who lost his voice in one of the wars. No one can even imagine she is a girl, not a tough mute boy. Only Rictus once notices her familiar eyes, but doesn't have time to understand as construction begins on a well-armed supply truck to withstand raider attacks in the lawless wasteland. Considering the situation, the girl plans to escape, hiding a motorcycle and supplies under the main truck. Sometime later, during another trip along Fury Road to the fuel farm, the truck is attacked by marauders who left Dementus' gang. The truck's guards engage in battle, which takes place while moving. The Separatists use everything, including parachutes, to capture the vehicles. Taking advantage of this, Furiosa descends under the truck to free the motorcycle from its chains. During this time, a technician descends to replace a part of the damaged hose but falls, managing to pass Furiosa a spare part. One of the attackers approaches the truck and attaches explosives to its underside. Furiosa saves the truck and, risking her life, fixes the breakdown. The Separatists don't relent, and the driver does everything to shake off the pursuers, but they are persistent, and almost all the guards are killed. Furiosa climbs onto the truck's hood, her helmet is knocked off, and the driver, Praetorian Jack, realizes she is a girl. Furiosa climbs into the cab, and together with Jack, they fend off the remaining Separatists. In the end, all the military guards are killed, leaving only Jack in the truck, Furiosa, and a mutant who, at her command, releases spiked balls, destroying the flying vehicle, but dying himself. The girl returns to the cab and tries to kill Jack, but he throws her off the truck and leaves her on the road. However, he later returns and offers to create a new convoy with her, respecting her bravery. Furiosa becomes Jack's deputy and receives the title of Praetorian. Meanwhile, Dementus, with his inability to manage, practically destroys Gastown's infrastructure, leading to worker dissatisfaction. Realizing no better opportunity will come, Jack proposes they flee, providing Furiosa with everything needed. However, they make another trip and find chaos, which Dementus unsuccessfully tries to quell. Realizing he cannot succeed, Dementus calls a council at the Citadel and orders the truck to leave, leaving supplies behind. Learning of this, Immortan Joe becomes enraged and orders Furiosa and Jack to collect weapons and ammunition in Leadtown. That evening, Jack confesses to Furiosa that he wants to help her because he still remembers his parents. The girl shows him the star map on her arm and offers to leave with her. During their last trip, Jack orders the crew to load the tanker with everything necessary and has Furiosa drive the escort vehicle. However, when the truck arrives in Leadtown, they fall into an ambush. Jack sends a signal ordering Furiosa to flee while he leads the enemy away. But driven by revenge, the girl opens fire with a sniper rifle, trying to kill Dementus. Seeing her, the biker leader fires a grenade launcher at her. Jack, thinking she is dead, destroys the tower where Dementus is hiding. Hanging on the edge, Dementus manages to see Furiosa saving Jack from the abyss where the truck fell and driving away with him on a motorcycle. The pair reach their vehicle left outside the gates and drive off. A surviving Dementus gives chase. On the way, Furiosa tells Jack the route to the place of abundance. Meanwhile, Dementus' men catch up with them. Jack tries to stop the pursuers by firing a rifle, but their vehicle is forced off the road. Furiosa and Jack are dragged out. Enraged, Dementus orders both to be killed, but Jack must die first. Furiosa is chained and forced to watch as they torment her friend. But as evening falls, Dementus sees a hand hanging from a chain with a star map. The girl has cut off her own arm and is now riding away on a stolen motorcycle. With her last strength, she reaches the Citadel, where she is taken to Joe. The girl recounts everything that happened and helps plan the war against Dementus. Through trickery, they convince Dementus that the warriors have left the Citadel for Gastown, and the horde rushes to the fortress, where most of the bikers perish. In the meantime, Furiosa, having lost her way home, shaves her head, replaces her hand with a mechanical prosthesis, and prepares for battle. She seizes a vehicle the Praetorians prepared for pursuing Dementus and sets off alone. Meanwhile, Dementus and a few loyal followers try to flee, but Furiosa catches up with him in the desert. Dementus orders his companions to scatter in different directions to throw off the pursuer, but the girl confidently follows his tracks, killing his aides one by one. After a long chase, she finally catches Dementus in the desert. He lies down before her in submission but mocks her, saying revenge will not heal her. Furiosa chains him and reminds him of her murdered mother, but he suddenly confesses that he became this way after his wife and children were killed. He reminds her that no amount of his suffering will bring back her loved ones, and he has a very high pain threshold. Furiosa beats him, but soon realizes he is right. Revenge does not alleviate the pain of loss. When Dementis loses consciousness, she takes his teddy bear, and he finally recognizes her and proposes they join forces to conquer the wasteland. But the girl throws away the toy. A voiceover narrates that Furiosa imprisoned Dementis in the Citadel, using his living body as fertilizer to grow a peach tree from her mother's seeds. Later, she receives command of a new truck, hiding 5 of Immortan Joe's wives who want to escape from him. The new Mad Max movie is filled with fury and a thirst for revenge. It has an excess of harsh and unpleasant scenes, but it also has its philosophy, soul, and hope that even in the most unbearable conditions and the harshest trials, one can remain human and stay true to their goal. A young man returns home and discovers on the carpet in the living room his own body. Next to it lies an envelope with the inscription, "Look at me." The initial shock is replaced by curiosity as Alex finds a flash drive in the envelope, which he immediately plugs into his computer and on the screen sees just himself. The second Alex reassures himself he is not high and has not gone insane and advises to listen carefully. Thus, it all started with men in black coming to his house. Rebecca, an employee of a private scientific research institute of advanced technologies which cooperates with the National Security Agency of the USA, has a very tempting offer for Alex. But first, Alex must sign non-disclosure agreement, for which Rebecca offers a check for a substantial amount. Having signed the papers, Alex learns the story of an American unregistered satellite which the USA did not launch. Strangely enough to admit, the satellite is allegedly from the future and contains a coded message inside. If Alex agrees, he will be put to sleep and delivered to the laboratory. The institute knows that he is practically bankrupt and lives in a house inherited from his parents. To prove the seriousness of her intentions, Rebecca immediately transfers a large sum to Alex's account, which convinces him to sign the documents. The next day, he is put in a car, given an injection, after which he falls asleep and only comes to his senses in a closed, secret place. Rebecca shows him the laboratory where the satellite is already located. And the guy starts solving the task. 5 weeks pass, but there are no results yet. Rebecca suggests Alex take a day off, but the guy does not need it. One day he is visited by a vision in which a young woman decodes the same task. After that, Alex bleeds from his nose. Later he finds the name of this woman written on the frame of the bed. Soon, Alex manages to decrypt part of the code, which contains drawings of an unknown device. Rebecca announces the end of his work and informs him that he will be taken home. Alex comes to his senses at home late at night. He feels ill, which he attributes to fatigue and stress. But after a few days, the malaise intensified, and he began to be haunted by persistent hallucinations. And one day, 2 strange-looking men appear on the threshold of his house, wanting to know why he agreed to decrypt the code. Alex does not understand because decryption is just his job, which pays well. The men continue to press Alex with questions about morality. Don't the consequences of his work bother him, since the device to be created from the decrypted drawings will be the most powerful weapon in the world? Alex's head starts to hurt, and he asks the men to leave. They thank him for the answers and leave. Alex immediately feels better and sits down at the computer, but at that moment, a call comes from Rebecca, reminding him of the signed non-disclosure agreements. An indignant Alex realizes that the institute is watching him, and when he again sits down at the computer in his house, the lights go out. Alex goes outside and suddenly sees one of the 2 men who came to him with questions on the opposite side of the street, but the man's body starts growing before his eyes. Frightened, Alex runs home and looks out the window to see the giant's hand reaching for his window. Alex extends his hand to meet it, and morning comes. Rebecca, who has arrived, finds Alex at work. He tries to explain that humanity lives in 2-dimensional space, and his recent guests are a highly developed civilization that exists not only in space but also in time. They can be in this room but earlier or later, and they can watch what is happening through some kind of window in time. Alex tries to convey to Rebecca the danger of the device they are building, which can start World War III. Then the woman informs him that she knows about his illness, a brain tumor. The guy blames the institute, which placed him in a room with a radioactive satellite, causing a tumor to develop in his brain, and insists on stopping the construction of the device. Alex, in the present, pulls his dead body out of the house and buries it in the forest, then returns to the computer and continues to listen to the story from his future self. Alex, in the future, regrets that they did not want to listen to him because he understood that something ominous was coming. Then he remembers the woman. She is cryptographer. Alex finds her address, but Beth refuses to talk to him. Alex shouts that he is dying. He has 6 months left. After that, Beth opens the doors and informs that she has 2 years left. She also realized that it was a weapon, and the drawing supposedly came from the future. There is another person, Schieferman, who communicates with her through the computer and sends her tasks, which she solves when she feels normal. Beth starts feeling unwell, so a man takes her to the bedroom, while he goes downstairs, where it seems like he sees the girl's life in the mirrors. There she is, saying goodbye to her beloved in military uniform. There his comrades inform her of terrible news, and there she is with a handful of pills in her hand, trying to leave this life. But then his attention is captured by a message from Schieferman appearing on the computer monitor. Alex responds, but Schieferman quickly realizes that it's not Beth and disconnects. The man then grabs a pack of printed papers with tasks previously given by Schieferman. In the morning, Beth finds him on her sofa, with the papers glued together. The guy points out to her that all this are pieces of a puzzle which, when assembled, can give an answer. Schieferman clearly doesn't work at the institute. Alex asks Beth to help stop the creation of a death machine. The girl reports that she fell ill specifically after working with the satellite. She started having hallucinations and began thinking about a message from the future. What if it's possible to contact the sender? She began to hear the voices of the dead and one day heard her own voice. She also saw aliens, though she doesn't believe in them, and asks Alex to leave. Alex goes home, where people in black are waiting for him. Rebecca orders him not to meet with Beth anymore and urges him to use the remaining time wisely. Angered, the guy sends the guests to hell, and upon entering the house discovers that all his papers with conclusions have disappeared. Meanwhile, Beth sees a bright light at her house, which makes her feel sick. The woman screams in fear and tries to hide. Alex tries to drown his thoughts in alcohol when a message from Schieferman arrives on his computer. The guy is sure that Rebecca is hiding behind this nickname, but the interlocutor denies it. At that moment, the doorbell rings. Beth is on the threshold. It turns out that Schieferman directed Beth here and sent her the blueprints of a device capable of destroying the technology from the future. The couple begins developing a virus capable of destroying the machine being created from the blueprints they decrypted through the computer. But the next morning, Rebecca bursts into Alex's house. Representatives of the institute know about their work and are already on their way there. She gives the name of the institute's founder and orders to go to him as soon as possible. She is Schieferman and hope to destroy the device with their help. Then cars approach Alex's house. The couple escapes through the back exit. Rebecca is caught, given an injection, and thrown into a car. Meanwhile, all the gas burners in the kitchen are opened. In the evening, Alex and Beth arrive at scientist Miles, who immediately recognizes both of them, as he has always followed their work. The thing is, this satellite was not the only one. There was another, which orbited Earth for about 400 years. Apparently, unknown beings from the future were waiting for Earthlings to grow up, fly into space, and be able to decrypt their message. The ancient satellite also contained blueprints of a machine whose purpose was to limit the evolution of humanity within the third dimension. But when Miles announced his discovery, he was laughed at. He also developed a tumor, luckily not fatal. He is sure that aliens are capable of existing in several dimensions. They do not perceive time in a linear form as humans do. And the second device, which is now being created at the Institute, will likely provide them access to the human dimension. So far, they are like watching a videotape where humans are movie characters. With the help of the first device, they can watch this movie but cannot change what is happening. But the second will allow changing the existing reality. Miles is just beginning to understand the essence of this process, but cannot explain everything completely. After all, even the appearance of the aliens is formed by the human brain itself. And by the way, he has been in contact with a huge alien visible only to him, living in his garden for more than 30 years. Miles constantly looks at it, causing his brain to adapt and begin to see the true appearance of the humanoid. But his guests see no one. Miles is sure that the tumor in their heads is the aliens' help so that people could perceive their reality. Alex suggests simply smashing the device with a hammer, but where is the guarantee that they will not restore it in the Institute? So all data on the server needs to be erased, although no one even knows the location of the Institute. But Miles reminds that he is one of its founders, and he pulls out a map with a detailed plan of the Institute. At that moment, a loud bang is heard at the door. The couple runs away, while Miles tries to calm down the raging alien. Alex and Beth hit the road and soon find the Institute's building, where they open a hatch through which they sneak inside. There they separate to increase the chances of finding the laboratory. Alex witnesses the strange behavior of a guard who constantly returns backward and realizes that time inside the Institute is looped. Beth also falls into this loop. Realizing the futility of her attempts to go further, the girl activates the bomb. But because of the time loop, she is unable to leave the dangerous place. Alex goes into a dark room and tries to carry the bomb further when he is overtaken by an alien and literally disintegrates the man into small particles. A minute later, Alex finds himself tied to a table. Opposite him sits a humanoid. Alex thinks he has died, but the alien denies his belief. They are simply curious about the human appearance and their experience of time. Linear time for aliens is incomprehensible and tedious, a labor-intensive cycle of empty beliefs. Humans are like in a trap, forced to constantly go through the same thing. Aliens, on the other hand, exist outside of time and space. They are in every moment. Therefore, causal connection and sequence of actions for them is a mystery. What will happen if a human no longer has to wait for something? Alex realizes humans will become similar to the appearance of aliens, but the familiar personality, the ego, dies in the moment. The alien is surprised. Death is natural, but man hides and distances himself from it. Time determines everything for a human. It is both a giver and a thief. A human sees the world as he imagined it, and what will happen when the source of projection disappears. Even with the eternity of self-analysis, man will not understand the difference between reality and illusion. With each newly born, a new reality comes. Therefore, a person always stands before choice. Alex feels very bad, and then the alien offers to return to the moment before the guy got sick, with the information he now has. Alex decides that he would not have gone to work at the Institute and would have stopped all this. The alien is surprised. Why would he change his behavior if he's not able to change the situation? And then Alex admits, people do not choose what will happen. The humanoid insists, will his return to the past make a difference? Can something change? And immediately, the guy finds himself in his home, in front of the computer. He records this flash drive, realizing that nothing can be changed. The world may disappear tomorrow, but this is not news. Everything has already happened. Everything ended before it began. He puts the flash drive in an envelope and falls to the floor. The last words on the flash drive are about Alex in the past, warning Beth, and he drives to the girl's house, while Alex from the future, in his last words, asks to forget about everything and live on. Quite an interesting movie that makes you think, what if the concept of time really does not exist, and we live only here and now in one single moment? Who made us believe that there is a past and a future? And is it true that a person does foolish things, not thinking about how his thoughts and actions change his own future? Friends, write your opinion in the comments.
One day, an 11th grader named Nikolai comes to school and immediately gets into trouble with his classmate Victor. Victor is upset about an unflattering comment about their mutual love interest, Nastya, appearing on the board. Victor drags Kolya to the classroom, but Kolya tells everyone that this is nothing compared to what awaits them in the future. After all, an alien spaceship is already on its way to Earth. However, the pilot made a mistake and arrived in the wrong place, accidentally catching the signal of Kolya's best friend and avid gamer, Fima. Thanks to this mistake, Earth will soon join the Star Federation, which will immediately accelerate progress in all areas of knowledge and medicine. But in 2110, military conflicts will begin with the Cosmic Pirate Alliance, led by Glot, who can travel through time. Humans had a tough time until a special squad led by Kira was sent into battle. She will reach Glot and sacrifice herself to destroy him. Kira will leave behind a daughter, Alice, who will study at the same school as Kolya, but 100 years in the future. However, Alice finds studying completely uninteresting. Some of her classmates of alien origin pay attention to her and offer friendship, but the girl's mind is occupied with entirely different thoughts. On this day, she returns from school, greets the robot Werther, and shows off new bracelets that allow for creating combat simulations. Werther immediately helps her pass a level, fighting 3 space pirates at once. At the most inopportune moment, her father, Professor Seleznev, appears in the simulation and gets hit in the nose. Alice immediately stops the fight and helps the injured. Here, the father notices the bracelet, which turns out to be sent from the military academy named after her mother, where she applied for admission. The man is outraged by her decision, but Alice reminds him that after the battle, her mother's body was never found, so she could very well be somewhere in the past. Alice takes her father to the tree growing in the middle of his bio-laboratory. An unmistakable heart silhouette, 100 years old, is visible on the bark. Could this be a message from her mother? Moreover, the robot has already found a similar woman in the past, a physics teacher from Moscow named Margarita. Coincidentally, she turns out to be Kolya's teacher, and in her time, she is rushing to the classroom where the boys are sorting things out. Understanding the situation, the teacher stops the fight. Kolya gets a reprimand and is ordered to erase the nasty comment he wrote on the board. Kolya and Fima go to the classroom, but the permanent marker doesn't come off, and Kolya decides to find a more effective solution in the lab. He breaks the doors, climbs to the top shelf where some vials are stored, and drops a water-filled lens, but it falls to the floor in a kind of slow motion. Kolya tries to find an explanation for this effect. Examining the wall, he finds a hidden safe, from which he takes out a box containing something strange, resembling a small galaxy. Suddenly, this object gets absorbed into Kolya's palm and he starts to convulse, while a voice whispers to him that the Cosmian has reappeared in the system. Terrified, Kolya runs into the corridor, and then outside, but the schoolyard around is completely different. There are many aliens around the school. Eventually, Kolya bumps into Alice, who, without understanding, performs a move and throws the boy to the ground. He sees the girl and is at a loss for words. Then he complains of feeling unwell, causing the girl to laugh. Is his biodata chip not working? Kolya doesn't understand her sarcasm and asks to call an ambulance. Alice then realizes that something is wrong with the boy. Besides, he is dressed very strangely. Kolya shows his pass, a badge, and the girl asks him to look around. Realizing that this is the future, the boy loses consciousness. Meanwhile, in a space prison, a pirate named Jolly, because he is always laughing, escapes from his cell, comes to the cell of the space pirate Glot, and admits that he has been recognized as the captain of the Alliance. But Glot reminds him that without the Cosmian, they won't be able to conquer even the most underdeveloped planet. He can feel its waves and can find it. Jolly agrees to cooperate and frees Glot. Glot uses his mental powers to force the guards to self-destruct, and the pirates escape. Meanwhile, Kolya regains consciousness and is frightened by the robot Werther. Alice confirms that it is the year 2124. She shows him a view of a futuristic city with blooming sakura and white bridges. The temperature is now controlled by humans. Machines are used as needed. The meat they eat is artificial. At this time, Professor Seleznev comes to the laboratory. Learning that the boy somehow traveled from the past, he begins the analysis and finds that Kolya's body contains a cluster of exotic matter with variable gravity, what they call the Cosmian. Kolya explains where and how he found this object. Learning that his physics teacher is named Margarita, Alice immediately understands that this is her mother. After this news, the father shows Alice a letter. In it, the missing wife explains that because of the Cosmian, she ended up in 2014. The problem is that with its help, one can only move exactly 100 years. Kira changed her details and hid securely so that the pirates wouldn't find her. She asks her daughter to look after her father, and she will always be proud of her. Alice runs out of the room in tears. Kolya rushes after her. Alice, sitting under the tree, tells her virtual father everything she thinks about him. Werther leads Kolya to this place and explains that meeting oneself in another time leads to a continuum failure. And then the space pirates appear. Glot captures Kolya with his mental power, but Werther manages to activate the alarm signal. Glot reports that they can't take the Cosmian while the boy is alive, and the pirate Jolly prepares his weapon. But Alice rushes into the fight, using bionic arms. The professor appears, trying to stop the fight. However, Kolya, obeying Glot's mental power, shoots the professor. An energy release occurs, and reality begins to change. Alice, Kolya, and the pirates find themselves in the middle of a highway in 2024. Alice and Kolya run away, and Jolly chases them, jumping on cars. Werther helps the kids, And when the pirate catches up with the pair and stabs Alice with a sword, it turns out to be her hologram. Then the pirate cuts the robot in half. Angry, he complains to Glot, but Glot takes control of a motorcyclist and knocks his partner down. However, Jolly gets up and finds Kolya's pass card on the road. Now he knows which school he attends and plans to do without Glot. Meanwhile, Kolya and Alice ride away from this place by subway. Kolya takes the girl to his home. He explains to his mother that Alice lost her keys and cannot stay outside, and she allows the girl to stay overnight. At night, Kolya admits that he writes texts and performs rap dedicated to Alice. This makes an impression on her. Meanwhile, Jolly tries to get to the school, but taxi drivers take him for a lunatic. So Jolly grabs a smartphone with a mapped route from one of the taxi drivers and heads to the place on foot. And physics teacher Kira sees a news report about the incident on the road and recognizes the pirate Jolly. The next morning, Kolya brings Alice to school, where Nastya mistakes her for his new girlfriend and starts to harass the couple, not letting them pass. Then Kolya sees his physics teacher Kira, catches up with her, and starts telling her what happened. But the woman notices Fima and is puzzled because he should be at Kolya's apartment playing. The conversation is interrupted by the appearance of Jolly, who, seeing Kira, proposes to settle the matter peacefully. But the woman engages in a fight. The pair wreck everything around, and eventually, Kira ends up in the physics classroom, where Alice, Kolya, Fima, Nastya, and her new boyfriend Victor are hiding. They barricade themselves inside, Jolly breaks in, and Alice asks Kolya to take them to the future. But to activate the Cosmian, strong emotions need to be evoked in Kolya. And when the pirate breaks through the wall, Alice kisses Kolya. Temporal vortices start immediately. Taking advantage of the pirate's confusion, Kira cuts off his arm. The whole team is transported to the future. However, it is not at all a wonderful place. The school is destroyed and battle robots are flying outside. Kira hits one of them with a sword and its outer mask falls off, revealing the robot assistant Werther underneath. He explains why the world has changed. It turns out that in the original story, Fima, on the day of Kolya's first transfer to the future, went to his apartment to play in a gaming tournament and accidentally received the signal from the lost alien courier, which led Earth to join the Star Federation. But in the new reality, Glot, who ended up in the past, directed Fima to school instead of the tournament and took the signal himself. Earth turned into a Pirate Alliance outpost, enslaving humanity and forcing them to work for a bowl of soup. Werther leads the team to Jolly, who has hardly aged over 100 years. It turns out that he was the one who saved Werther, disguising him as a pirate bot. Kira doesn't believe the pirate, but he convinces the team that he is now on their side. And all these years, he has been craving revenge on Glot for betraying him, although by the oath, he cannot harm him personally. If they destroy Glot, everything will return to normal. 100 years ago, Fima received the signal. So they need to go to Kolya's apartment and stop Glot in the past. Kira, Kostya, and Jolly head to Kolya's apartment to thwart Glot's plan. Meanwhile, Fima suddenly wonders why Glot didn't track their move. The friends conclude that it is a trap, and indeed, they fall into a pirate ambush. Their friends rush to their rescue, and Victor destroys the attackers with a bomb found on Jolly. But it also collapses a huge building on the street. Frightened Kolya tries to save his friends and moves them to the past, to their time. But he returns to the future, where a fierce battle with the surviving pirates is underway. Jolly locks Kira in a room, taking the blows on himself and receiving a fatal wound. Glot appears, happy to announce that he is now free from the oath. He waits for his former comrade to die. In the past, Kolya's friends run to his apartment where they find Glot. In the future, Kolya, Kira, and Alice also arrive at Kolya's apartment. He tries to move to the future, causing the realities to fluctuate, merging and diverging. In the past, friends beat each other on Glot's orders. And in the future, also under Glot's influence, Alice starts to strangle Kolya. She tries to resist Glot's mental command, but she can't. Kolya dies. Glot of the future receives the Cosmian. Alice, freed from his influence, rushes to revive Kolya, but it's all in vain. But when the girl starts crying over him, he suddenly opens his eyes. At this time, Glot absorbs the Cosmian. Alice tells him that her mother is still alive and she can defeat him again. But he reminds her that 100 years ago, in this apartment, he killed Kira and Kolya's friends. Kolya disputes with Glot, claiming that in the past, his friends can still defeat the pirate. Angered, Glot offers him to see it for himself and moves them to 100 years ago in the past. But when Glot, Alice, and Kolya arrive in 2024, the future Glot meets the past Glot, causing a continuum failure, making Glot multiply first and then disappear. This was Kolya's plan. The unclaimed Cosmian begins to work on its own until Kolya reaches for it. However, the resulting anomaly throws Alice and Kira into 2124. Kolya ends up in an intertemporal space, from where he is thrown into his 2024. He wakes up in a hospital, where the jubilant FEMA reports that he managed to receive the signal from the alien courier, and this restored history to its original course. Kolya realizes that the Cosmian inside him is gone, and now he can no longer travel through time, and he will never see Alice again. Meanwhile, Alice and Kira find themselves at their home and see their husband and father alive and well. It turns out Kolya wrote him a warning letter that was delivered 100 years later, and he managed to substitute his hologram under the pirate's shot. Later, Kolya and his friends plant a tree as a symbol of caring for the future. Kolya draws a heart on the tree, and Alice receives this message in the future, understanding that the boy remembers her. This is where the movie ends.
"1967. Upon landing on Earth, after completing their mission, the Soviet spacecraft Soyuz 1, with cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov on board, tragically perishes. Many years later, under the leadership of the Swedish billionaire Meyer, an expedition to Mars is being prepared. After 10 months, the crew of the spaceship Ulysses reaches the Red Planet. The captain informs the team that they have received permission to land and asks the ship's AI, named Irene, to verify everything required for a soft landing. At this time, Meyer reveals that he spent 4 years preparing for this journey, sacrificing almost all his money for it. However, the American company Zillion beat them to it by landing 2 weeks ago. The problem is that Earth has received no news from the American crew, except for one video in which they ask not to come to Mars. A dispute arises among the crew members, but the captain declares that the landing will occur in any case, and people disperse to their cabins. With 30 minutes left until landing, AI Irene begins preparations. However, an unforeseen event occurs. The ship does not detach from the carrier system, posing a threat to the entire crew. The only way out is to perform the separation manually. The commander ventures into space and struggles to free the attachments, but at that moment, the shuttle enters Mars's atmosphere, throwing the captain into open space. The shuttle almost crashes onto Mars as a system error causes a power outage. Now, they can only rely on manual landing. AI Irene goes into sleep mode, and the astronauts still manage to land on Mars. They succeeded, but their fuel is depleted, and Irene does not restart. Without the onboard computer and life support system, they have only a day to survive. Alessandra mourns her deceased husband when she sees a figure in a spacesuit through the window. After diagnosing the ship, it becomes apparent that too much fuel was consumed during the landing, and now the ship cannot return to orbit. The only option is to wait for the solar panels to power the generators, but there's a storm on the surface, and it will take 2 days, time they don't have. At this point, Simon mentions the American ship, Zeta 1, which beat them by 2 weeks. It likely crashed, but there are probably batteries left. The rover sets out on a journey while those remaining on the ship try to restart the system. Engineer Basil recalls that the AI has an energy-saving function. He initiates a reboot, but Irene doesn't start. At this time, the rover finds the wreckage of the American spacecraft and one surviving solar panel, but there is no sign of the American crew. The astronauts head back but spot an unconscious person in a spacesuit. Despite their ship running low on oxygen, Jana insists on transporting the person. Nearby, they find the black box from the American spacecraft. The team arrives at the ship, but Jan refuses to let them inside, stating that 4 survivors are better than 8 corpses, so he won't open the doors. Alessandra tries to persuade the man when the discovered astronaut wakes up, and at that moment, AI Irene activates and opens the doors. Upon examination, the found astronaut knows nothing about the American crew, as he is Vladimir Komarov, a Soviet cosmonaut born in 1927 in Moscow, carrying out the orders of the USSR government. He doesn't know how he ended up here but is not willing to reveal any secrets. Komarov confidently answers questions that are consistent with his time, raising the suspicion that he may have post-traumatic stress disorder. The astronauts send a message to Earth and receive a response from the American corporation, Zillion, stating that there were no Russians in their mission. The crew of the Ulysses spaceship tries to make sense of the situation. How could Komarov, who died in 1967, end up on Mars after all these years? Is he a time traveler or an extraterrestrial? The psychologist is tasked with questioning Komarov first, and he confesses that he is hungry. Jana goes to get food while the others try to understand what has actually happened. Basil suggests the idea that Komarov was waiting for them. Meanwhile, Vladimir is eating the food brought by Jana when the woman confesses that he died 50 years ago and his family buried him long ago. Komarov takes this news rather calmly. In the meantime, the state of the ship, although it has reached stability, remains unreliable because the engines do not work and there is no fuel. So, leaving is impossible. The crew continues to keep an eye on Komarov, but he behaves calmly until he suddenly disappears. Simon searches the ship, but it yields no results. That's when the people discover that his spacesuit is missing. A part of the crew follows the heat trail tracked by Irene. The group, led by Simon, leaves the rover and continues on foot when Alessandro reports that Komarov's DNA analysis showed the presence of a third strand. He is not human. And then they catch up with Komarov, who leads them to an unfamiliar structure with a small stone pyramid on it and tells Jana that Mars has been waiting for them for a very long time. At the same time, Goldstein, the founder of the Zillion Corporation, whose ship was the first to arrive on Mars, is informed about the discovery of a person on the Red Planet who couldn't have gotten there naturally, suggesting that he was created on site. However, only AI could survive for such a long time on a hostile planet for humans. This implies the need for further study. Meanwhile, Komarov cannot explain how he opened the door and found himself in the location where they discovered him. Irene conducts an analysis of the structure and determines that it is identical to Earth structures from ancient civilizations. It means that someone was inspired by human civilization, or humans borrowed these elements from extraterrestrials. The ship's crew increasingly ponders whether they will be able to return home when they notice the landing of Goldstein's second ship. Soon, the captain of the ship, Gemma, establishes contact and promises to help them return to Earth. However, Meyer does not trust Goldstein and advises hiding Komarov from competitors. Jana brings Komarov a uniform so that he does not stand out when the visitors arrive, and he requests that they trust him. Shortly, two armed military personnel, Edward and Adam, arrive on their ship and behave rather aggressively. Edward demands that they hand over the black box from the Zeta-1 ship and, not hearing agreement, orders his partner to search the ship. Meyer hands over the found black box and they depart. Meanwhile, chemist Eva reports that the stone found on Mars consists of an alloy that does not exist on Earth. However, it is known from ancient sources and was once called orichalcum, the metal of Atlantis. In addition to copper, zinc, nickel, and iron, it contains a third strand of DNA, similar to Komarov's. Meyer warns that if Goldstein learns about this, he will take the cosmonaut back. The crew is divided into those willing to exchange him for fuel and those who are willing to stay but want to know the truth. Jana invites Vladimir into her cabin and asks for permission to use hypnosis. He agrees, and the psychologist begins her work. The rest of the crew listens to the conversation via transmission. However, Komarov only shares the final moments on the Soyuz spacecraft before its demise. During this time, Gemma and Alan arrive on the ship and apologize for the actions of the military, and express their readiness to help fix all the malfunctions. Jana remembers her conversation with Komarov, who laments the future of Earth due to humanity's irresponsible behavior. In the meantime, it is revealed that the billionaire Meyer did not plan the flight just for the sake of it. 4 years ago, the rover sent a photo to Earth of the found stele, and he confesses that they found a stone with unknown DNA. Gemma explains that it's an information storage system that can be rewritten. Upon hearing these words, AI Irene activates and deciphers the message on the stone. It's a series of numbers. At this time, the hesitant Jan leads a mutiny. He doesn't trust Meyer, who warned them about Zillion. But now, the Americans have come to their aid, and their leader, as it turns out, concealed the true purpose of the flight. He is ready to switch sides to Goldstein, who is willing to do whatever it takes to combat his terminal illness. Later, engineer Basil informs Meyer that Komarov is the same kind of program as the stone they found, but the most crucial revelation is that he deciphered a copy of the black box from Zeta-1, which shows that the oxygen on the ship was cut off at the moment when one of the Americans struck Komarov. This means he was there. He also activated AI Irene when he boarded their ship. After the conversation, Meyer shows Jana the photos they received 4 years ago from Mars, which, when decrypted, revealed Jana's face. This is why he brought her on the expedition. The woman is disappointed. Meyer played everyone. Suddenly, she sees herself in her father's house, where Komarov tells her that she is the link between Mars and Earth. He has been waiting for her for thousands of years, and now he will prepare her to make a difficult decision. He provides coordinates on Mars where Jana should go. Meanwhile, on Earth, scientists inform Goldstein that Komarov is the equivalent of a computer, and he himself is a biological machine. They are ready to transfer his brain into Komarov's body, but cannot guarantee the preservation of his personality. However, Goldstein is ready to take any risk to get rid of his terminal illness. Meanwhile, Jana leaves the ship despite Simon's protests. At this time, technicians Alan and Alessandra test the engine and discover that access to it is blocked, and Irene suddenly begins responding with jokes, which is entirely uncharacteristic for a machine. It is revealed that she has reprogrammed herself. Her interface and logic are changing, and she refuses to answer who or what made her do this. Engineer Basil realizes that her system is becoming like a brain. Irene confesses that she is evolving. In the meantime, Jana finds a small stone pyramid, and Simon forcibly makes Gemma accompany him in the search for Jana. Jan discovers his absence, and after contacting Simon, receives an order not to let anyone inside. Just at that moment, American military personnel arrive, demanding that they hand over Komarov. Jan is willing to open the entrance, but the rest of the team opposes it. Mayer asks Basil to send a message to Goldstein, hoping that he may be more reasonable than his people. However, Irene has blocked communication with Earth. The engineer realizes that radical measures will have to be taken, but Jan still opens the doors, and the military personnel enter. Basil begins to reboot Irene, just as the Americans find Komarov, but then the lights go out, and the astronaut disappears. Meanwhile, Jana, stumbling, falls from a hill. She regains consciousness but discovers that her leg is trapped between rocks, and she cannot free herself. At this moment, the enraged military officer demands that the crew explain where Komarov went. He begins to beat people, demanding to summon the captain. Desperate, Jana screams, "Is her destiny to die in a pit on Mars?" But she is found by Simon and Gemma. Alessandra notices an approaching storm. The military officer is preparing to leave the Ulysses ship, leaving the people in danger. Suddenly, the lights start flashing, and the newly appeared Komarov asks to take him back to Earth. Simon, Gemma, and Jana go together to the place indicated by Komarov and find an entrance to an underground bunker, very similar to the Petra tomb. The psychologist feels where to go and leads the couple. Soon, they find real water, but this is not what Komarov wanted to show them. Meanwhile, on Earth, Goldstein tells the nurse a story about the study of Mars. People were searching for green men, but it's all much simpler. He tells the story of the loyal dog Hachiko and compares Komarov to him, who was created by someone 100,000 years ago and left on Mars, where he faithfully waited for his owner to this day. At this time, on Mars, the astronauts find a wall made of human bones and realize that they are not the first people on this planet. It's not Earthlings colonizing Mars, it's the Martians who came to Earth, depleting the resources of the Red Planet. A tragedy unfolds on the Ulysses spaceship. The cowardly Yan grabs a gun, intending to get on the American ship at any cost to return to Earth, and shoots Komarov. Jana immediately falls in excruciating pain and Gemma flees. Alessandra tries to help Komarov, and Simon helps Jana, but the Russian cosmonaut dies, and Jana stops breathing too. Then Simon removes his helmet and, surprised by the presence of air in the cave, performs artificial respiration on her. The girl regains consciousness. Gemma walks toward the Ulysses ship when she's informed of Komarov's death and the approaching storm. Meanwhile, Meyer secretly goes in search of his crew members because the Americans refuse to take the billionaire's team back to Earth. At this moment, a recovering Jana sees the light in the bunker and leads Simon to it. Upon coming out, the astronauts see a figure in a spacesuit in front of them and recognize Komarov. Meyer finds the entrance to the bunker and catches up with Simon and Jana while heading toward the light. He is amazed by the presence of a living Komarov who suddenly tells them that everything ended here a long time ago. People realize that this is the North Pole of Mars, but how did they get here? Komarov explains that this planet was once inhabited by a species that went extinct because it went astray. And that species was humans. A group of survivors settled in this place but ended up killing each other when resources ran out. The rest of them flew back to Earth. Plato called them the Atlanteans. Komarov continues to talk about how he waited for thousands of years for Zhana, who embodies qualities of both branches, human and Martian AI. Only she can save humanity from themselves. She must decide whether humans deserve a second chance. Their conversation is interrupted by the military officer who intends to take the psychologist back to Earth. The American aims his weapon at the cosmonauts, and Zhana seeks help from Komarov. Suddenly, the military officer starts gasping for breath and falls. Upon returning to the ship, Simon orders them to prepare to depart. Meanwhile, Gemma from the Zillion ship tries to contact her associates, but none of them respond. She decides to fly back to Earth alone. The Ulysses crew heads to her ship, trying to establish contact with her and informing her about the deaths of the military personnel, but she doesn't respond. That's when Meyer starts speaking, recalling their past relationship, and confesses that he's no better than Goldstein because he's willing to do anything to ensure his name remains in history, even betraying his team. However, she's not like that. She won't be able to live knowing she has ruined people. Suddenly, Gemma's voice is heard, asking them to hurry. Goldstein has heard that Gemma has decided to take the Ulysses crew back to Earth and has blocked the control panel of the Zeta-2 ship before takeoff. The people on the ship prepare for their impending demise, and Zhana asks Mars what she should do. Everything she saw and heard on the red planet flashes through her mind, and, with sheer willpower, she removes the control panel's block. Suddenly, an armed military officer appears in front of the ship, intent on damaging the engines with his weapon. Simon is about to step out to stop the madman, but Zhana beats him to it. She aims the weapon at the American, but informs him that Mars will be the one to kill him. The military officer falls. The countdown for liftoff begins, and Zhana realizes that there's no time to return. She bids farewell to the crew, confessing her love for Simon. The ship takes off. Suddenly, Meyer notices that it's dark at the North Pole of Mars. This means that they couldn't have been there just a few minutes ago. They truly were at the North Pole of Mars, but in the distant past when the red planet was still suitable for life. At the same time, Goldstein is informed of the ship's return, and he's beside himself with rage, declaring that he will go to Mars himself, and that's where the first season ends.